How to write a joke 101. So most jokes are broken down to the basics, which are setup, punchline, tag. So a setup is basically where you tell the story that leads to the punchline. The punchline is, of course, the part of the story that makes you laugh. And a tag is a mini punchline that we throw in at the end to let people know that they need to keep laughing. So let's do a setup. Setup is, I went to Cracker Barrel recently. That was the most aptly named place I've ever been in my life. Okay, that's the setup. Punchline is, everyone there was a cracker the size of a barrel. And then I'll throw in, I don't even remember what I say, but aptly named, blah, 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 ha, 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 everyone was a cracker. So the tag would be just one more quick joke afterwards while they're already laughing to keep them laughing. But most jokes are actually just setup, punchline. Now, the biggest mistake that most new comics make is they watch all these great comedians and think that they can tell stories. You can't. That's like saying I can play in the NBA, but I don't know how to dribble yet. Writing setup, punchline is dribbling. If you can't do that, you can't play in the NBA. You can't play at the Comedy Store. Go back, think of someone whose story you love, and I'm gonna show you a trick. Let's say it's Chris Rock, right? You wanna hear his story about going wherever he went. Listen to it, it's not a story. It is about 25 jokes about that story strung together, but it's not one long story. That's where you're mistaken. He probably wrote a joke about staying in a hotel, and then wrote a joke about being on an airplane, and then wrote another joke about when he visited, I don't know, wherever, New York. So now he goes, hey, I have this great joke about a hotel. I have a great joke about an airplane and visiting New York. He puts them all together. This one already had about 5 jokes. This one had about 5. This one had 10. Now he's got about 20 jokes that form a story. So that's how you write a joke. How do you learn to write jokes? By understanding jokes. That I can't teach you. That you're just gonna have to look at jokes and figure out the formula. It's always set up punchline, no matter what it is. But you'll have to start, if you can't figure it out, maybe you're not a comic, but comics seem to figure it out. We understand how to write jokes. We don't know how, we just do. I think that's usually how you know you're a comic, when you can be funny and form jokes. Just being funny is easy. I know way more people outside of comedy who are funnier than a lot of comics that I know. Being funny is pretty easy, but being consistently funny with jokes, that's hard. And that's hard as a comedian, and it's what we practice. I understand why it's a doctor's practice, because you're always learning. Those guys are always going back to school. That's what, even headliners, we feel like we're never done learning. Man, 10 years ago, I co-headlined with Jimmy Walker on the road, and we had our troubles in the 80s because I played him up to Good Times one night, and he didn't like that. And he yelled at me about it, and we didn't talk tons after that. Now we are co-headlining together, and I'm driving. I fell in love with the man because he told me he had done it for 30, 40 years or something at that point, which means he's now into his 50 years of comedy or more. But anyway, I realized I was learning from him for the week that I was on the road with him. And I hadn't learned a ton in forever because I was always the headliner teaching everybody. But getting up on that stage or talking to people better than me, I learn all the time. Or watching a comic who's younger than me, who's a killer, that teaches me. It shows me where comedy is now and where I need to be. You know what I mean? Never stop learning.